Additional officer into office by Northwest Governor Adolphe Lelafrique with calls for him to facilitate the return of peace and the crisis hit the division. Get full details right ahead. The new senior divisional officer for Bui Division in the Northwest region of Cameroon, Mengong Gilbert, was on Wednesday, October 27, commissioned into office at the Tobin Municipal Stadium. The new administrator was charged by the governor of the Northwest region, Adolphe Lelafrique, to mobilize the population in order to bring back peace in the entire Bui Division. 37-year-old Gilbert Mengong was equally called upon to use his experience and ensure maximum collaboration between law enforcement officials and the population, return of all Bui indigents who have fled home due to the crisis, and lastly to appeal to youths of Bui who have picked up arms to drop their arms and join the DDR centers that is currently accommodating over 600 youths. Speaking at the ceremony, the mayor for Kumbo, Dr. Mborang Vanashus, presented some of the challenges they face, ranging from insecurity created by the crisis, lack of social amenities, with hopes that the newly installed administrator will put an end to these problems. Gilbert Mengong Sunday, before his appointment as senior divisional officer for Bui, was the divisional officer for Kumbo Center, a post he occupied for 2 years in a division that has been described as the epicenter of the over 5-year socio-political crisis in the Northwest region of Cameroon. Gilbert Mengong Sunday takes over from Harry Lanyo, who has been moved to the West region as senior divisional officer of Open Camp Division. Over in the Southwest region, chiefs of Limbe organized a send-off party to bid farewell to the outgoing divisional officer for Limbe 1 subdivision. The event was attended by administrative, local and political authorities in Limbe 1 municipality as Kuma on the resources and the following report.
Send-off party of the outgoing divisional officer for Limbe 1 subdivision. The outgoing divisional officer for Limbe 1 subdivision, Archer Gilbert Quinter, has been described as a man of honesty and integrity, one who administered the population of Limbe 1 subdivision with love and integrity. These words to describe the civil administrator were echoed during a send-off party organized by the Royal Chiefdom of Limbe to bid farewell to the Archer Gilbert Quinter, recently promoted as Secretary General to the Southwest Governor's Office. Speaking during the event, the paramount ruler-elect of Limbe Chiefdom, His Royal Highness John Elufa Manga William, noted that for 2 years, the Royal Chiefdom of Limbe have had near-perfect relationship with the divisional officer. He was always present in all our activities, even when we informed him within a very short notice, the paramount ruler added. He thanked the outgoing divisional officer for standing by the Royal Chiefdom in times of difficulties and challenges, especially when quarter heads clashed with security and law enforcement officers. The prompt intervention of the duo prevented the situation from degenerating.
Each time there's a challenge, as I said, you always, there are things that you don't go deep into when you're we think that it was quite good.
On behalf of the quarter heads, Mola Moki Monono, quarter head of New Town West, described the outgoing divisional officer as a man of honesty and integrity, one who managed the affairs of the subdivision with diligence and tact. As a sign of appreciation and fruitful collaboration, during his stay in Limbe 1 subdivision, the Royal Chiefdom handed a paddle to the outgoing divisional officer to help him sail through the stormy moments in his career as a civil administrator. In reaction to the gesture, the outgoing divisional officer said he was elated by the love shown to him by the Limbe Royal Chiefdom, and called on them to do the same to his predecessor. He promised to open the doors of his new office to the Royal Chiefdom when they come visiting. Archer Gilbert Quinter urged the chief and quarter heads to continue working in close collaboration with the administration for a better Limbe 1 subdivision and Cameroon at large.
Close to 2 years ago, the mantle of leadership of Limbe 1 subdivision was handed over to me. At that time, I did not know many of you. It was in writing or in conversation that I knew we had quarter heads and they could do this, they could do that. But over the years, these persons, they not only became quarter heads, members of Royal Traditional Council, they will form a family and which I want to thank you.
The event also witnessed the presence of the divisional officers of Limbe 2 and Limbe 3 subdivision, as well as the Learned State Council of Limbe. They all described the outgoing divisional officer as an elder brother and one who worked with them with much love, respect, and always gave them advice.
Still ahead, Cameroon has benefited from support granted her by France in its fight against malaria, the #1 killer disease on the African continent. A laboratory dedicated to research on palyndology has been inaugurated in Yaoundé to that effect by French ambassador to Cameroon, Christophe Guillougavitos, with Nsah in the following report.
The French ambassador to Cameroon, Christophe Guillougavitos, unveiled the laboratory dedicated to the research on palyndology in the presence of Cameroon's Minister of Health, Manaoda Malachi, on October 26, 2021 at the Centre Pasteur in Yaoundé, the country's capital city. The new laboratory will help Cameroon in its fight against malaria, which has in recent years resurfaced massively, claiming the lives of thousands of Cameroonians. The Director General of Centre Pasteur Yaoundé, Dr. Merdat Kazanji, speaking at the event, pointed out that malaria is a major public health problem in the country, which needs to be tackled as a pertinent health crisis, while highlighting that in 2020, 11 million cases were recorded and over 11,000 deaths, including 60% of children, according to statistics in Cameroon. However, to Dr. Merdat Kazanji, the laboratory and insectarium built at a tone of 100 million francs CFA will provide a response to certain epidemics caused by mosquitoes. On his part, Minister Malachi Manaoda expressed satisfaction for these projects, which to him is an opportunity to develop a biological solution to the anaphylate malaria, which is a silent killer. The health boss also saluted the efforts of the staff at the center who work tirelessly for the well-being of the population. He reiterated the need for France and Cameroon to maintain the excellent cooperation ties that both countries share in order to meet the numerous challenges that still exist for access to quality health care. It is worth noting that the laboratory is an entomology platform intended to study insects that have an impact on human health. And for the record, Cameroon is among the 11 countries in the world that pays the heaviest price to malaria. This is according to the World Health Organization, WHO.
Nsah reports in there now. Brazilian economic operators and Cameroonian entrepreneurs met in Yaoundé for a prospection supervised by the Investment Promotion Agency. The meeting is part of the Brazilian Economic and Trade Mission organized by the Cameroonian Embassy in Brazil. Get details with Audrey Zadza in the following report.
A delegation of Brazilian investors led by the Brazilian ambassador to Cameroon, Viviane Los San Martin, is in Cameroon since October 23 for an investment prospection mission. The Trade and Economic Mission, which ends October 30, is organized by the Cameroon Embassy in Brazil and the Brazilian Cameroonian Chamber of Commerce in collaboration with the Embassy of Brazil in Cameroon. In a bid to capitalize on the implication of the South American economic operators and encourage fruitful partnerships with visitors, the Investment Promotion Agency, abbreviated as API, organized a meeting with Cameroonian entrepreneurs in Joga Palace recently. Amongst the Brazilian delegation center of interest are transformation of timber, tourism, and agriculture.
They were interested in certain areas, agriculture, things like transformation of timber, into finished products. They were interested in things like the transformation of residues, plastics and stuff like that. They were interested in areas like tourism and mines. And when we got these centers of interest, we had to ensure that we got on our own part in Cameroon people who were equally investing in those particular areas, so that we could match them together so that it becomes meaningful for the business, the B2Bs to take place. So, in fact, we've been working on that, and this evening You've seen some of the projects being presented by the Brazilians.
They presented to Cameroonian operators the Brazilian know-how and potential, notwithstanding how to invest in long-term agricultural projects.
Some more details on how to acquire agricultural land and how to invest in long-term agricultural projects which you had today, because some of them, the Brazilian group which is here to invest in agriculture is looking at a very big vision on agriculture, from soils, trying to fix our soils back into what it was, to the production of seeds, the whole value chain of agriculture, which has to be seen in a holistic way.
A meeting appreciated and of high importance to this young entrepreneur.
This meeting is important for us in the side of partnership with those Brazilian enterprises, because the solar energy is very, very important in our country today, especially for a rural region who does not have energy. So it's very, very important for us to keep in touch with those people.
The delegation will pursue its mission in the economic capital, Douala, tomorrow, October 29, 2021.
News out of the country. Nolinga takes us to South Africa, Benin, Sudan, and presents some top stories on the African continent.
Today's Africa's top stories. Our uncertainty is back on the streets of Sudan's capital, Khartoum, in the aftermath of Monday's military coup. Many residents erected barricades as the army continued to patrol the streets, chasing demonstrators away. 3 prominent pro-democracy activists were detained overnight by security forces as many feared the prospects of military rule. In response to the latest development, many businesses remained shut for a 3rd day in a row. There are reports of at least 6 deaths among a civilian population, as other citizens are critical of the civilian government and urge patience. The general behind the coup, Abdel Fattah Burhan, promised to hold elections in 2023, but many critics doubt his intentions. Meanwhile, in South Africa, 10,000 troops have been deployed to secure municipal polls against next week's local government elections. Parliament announced on Wednesday that President Cyril Ramaphosa had informed the institution about the employment of soldiers in partnership with police for the establishment of a safe and secure environment during the votes. The employment is expected to run from October 30th to November 3rd, as early this week, the Justice, Prevention and Security Cluster Ministers assured the country that next week's local government elections will be safe and free. Defense Minister Thandi Modise said police would be deployed at all voting stations. Away from that, French President Emmanuel Macron has confirmed the return of a collection of artifacts to Benin. The collection comprises 26 pieces looted during colonial times. On Wednesday, Macron visited the exhibition at the Quai Branly Jacques Chirac Museum in Paris, where the artifacts are on display until Sunday. The transfer of ownership will be enacted in 2 weeks during the visit of Beninese President Talon to the Élysée Palace. Meantime, Benin's foreign minister has praised France's example. Though it was in the United Kingdom that the Cambridge University became the first British institution to return a Benin bronze to the Nigerian authorities too. The return of the artifact culminates decades of campaigning by activists. We now move back to Benin to wrap up today's package, where an internationally recognized artist from the country has denounced the hypocrisy of political leaders on climate. Romuald Hazome, whose works are made from recycled materials, wants to alert Africans to the dangers of climate change and the consequences of inaction. Hazome points his finger firmly at politicians. According to the UN, if nothing changes, up to 118 million extremely poor people will be exposed to drought, floods, and extreme heat by 2030. The artist alerts to the effects of rising temperatures, not just in Africa, but all over the world. And with Glasgow COP26 around the corner, Romuald Hazome hopes that concrete steps must be taken to preserve the environment.
All news out of the African continent. Bokengo Wadi paints a picture of what is happening in Greece, India, Canada, and Russia. Her report.
Water shortage in Greece is likely to be compounded by drought, as some farmers in Thessaly are headed for financial ruin due to lack of their fields and crop irrigation. According to the government, Thessaly's annual water deficit is estimated to be 345 million tons. Therefore, farmers for the past 4 decades have been pumping water from an underground aquifers, which is not being equally replaced by rainfall. And in India, according to the Global Climate Risk Index, Bangladesh ranks 7th for countries most affected by extreme weather in the past 2 decades. Farmers too in this country are trying to adjust to unpredictable conditions and destruction caused by global warming. Away from climate change, Pope Francis agrees to visit Canada as indigenous leaders call for an apology from the Catholic Church over its role in the abuse of deaths of thousands of indigenous children. Over more than a century, at least 150,000 indigenous children were taken from their families and forced to attend residential school in the country. Many of these children were forcibly converted to Christianity and given new name and were restrained from speaking their native languages. After the shutdown of the last residential school in the 1990s, the Canadian government in 2008 apologized for their role in the abuse, together with the Presbyterian Church, Anglican Church, and the United Church of Canada, who also run other residential schools in the country, also apologized for their role in the abuse. However, the Catholic Church to date had not apologized for their role in the abuse, though they controlled about 3/4 of the 139 residential schools in the country. Moving on, only 32% of Russia's population have been fully vaccinated against coronavirus. The country in recent weeks have seen a daily increase in COVID-19 cases and deaths since the pandemic. New report on the country's COVID-19 cases as of today records 40,096 infections and 1,159 deaths within 24 hours. To this regard, the country is shutting down non-essential services in its capital city, Moscow, for 11 days to help fight the surge in COVID-19. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine is still on hold pending missing data and legal procedures. Aside from world deadly hazard, a 64-year-old fugitive in Sydney surrendered to Australian police as lockdown born from COVID-19 pandemic left him homeless and jobless. The 64-year-old Darko Desik was later sentenced to 2 months in prison for breaking out of the Grafton prison almost 30 years ago, where he was sentenced for growing marijuana. He pleaded guilty to the allegation and promised to serve the remainder of his jail term.
Bukengo, while this report concludes the 6:30 p.m. edition of News on My Media Prime Television. Coming up at 7 p.m. is Prime Hour with Kum Leonard and his team. My name is Fon Quinter. Have a great evening in the company of more programs on the African Eye. Goodbye.
Like what we are observing with our MPs today, people think that an MP's role is to come and do micro project grants, not knowing that what is expected of them is to make laws. The